And how did you show this, let's say, cooperation between the main corporation was in Maryland?
Yes.
And all of these other facilities? What did you show?
Well, there's the legal test for making the conclusion that they're all one big company is extensive. There's different factors, but one of the most important ones is showing that entities higher up in the chain have some control over what's happening at the facility level. So they set the employment policies.
Right.
The corporate human resources person was usually consulted, in fact, almost always. All the paperwork went through corporate. They were responsible for human resources, for the accounting, for setting the budget, managing the money, for, all kinds of aspects of running a facility were being handled outside the facility.
And you did this through your depositions, correct? Through your discovery process,
right?
As you have to do with every case.
Yes.
We have today some video depositions that you took of Donna Felton and a variety of other people at the company. We're going to go to them right now. Particularly, I'm going to lead off with this thing you mentioned earlier, statement you mentioned earlier about Donna possibly being arrested, by the fire marshal. So let's go to there right now.
Why did you resign?
I was very frustrated over the whole idea of having a fire marshal tell me he was going to put me in jail. The company telling me they were going to fix it, so the fire marshal was happy, and then them turning around and saying they weren't going to fix it, and I was very upset about it. And I just said, this isn't right.
We also have a video deposition of Donna talking about the poor conditions of the facility, etc., which we're going to show too.
Paragraph 19 says, following your resignation from Valle Norte, you reported your concerns about the facility to the state of New Mexico. How did you do that?
In the next facility that I was at, the state came in for inspection. The inspectors knew me from Valle Norte, and they asked me specifically why I left. And I told them over personal reasons, and I felt that the facility needed to be fixed, and it wasn't. And they said that they had gotten complaints of mold in a bathroom, and I said that was true.
Did they say who made that complaint?
No, they can't tell me that. But they said that there was complaints of mold in the bathroom. There was other complaints of other issues that they asked me about, which I don't remember. I know there were minor things. Sewer backing up in the kitchen during a mealtime. And they asked me if that was correct. I said yes, that had happened on one occasion, but it was taken care of immediately. But there was mold in the bathrooms, yes. They asked me had it been taken care of, and I said, I don't know, I have left.
This was all done verbally?
Yes.
And to who? Some state
to
agent?
a state inspector. Okay.
Two other interesting video depositions as we reviewed this case were the regional manager, Jaime Andujo, and the senior vice president, Christine Zach, who also have their own personal take on did Mike Prendergast get fired, was he terminated, and the fact that Christine Zach thinks that there's no correlation or connection between all these 100 facilities and the main corporation in Maryland, and we're going to go to that right now.
I don't recall, but my understanding was that Mike resigned.
Okay, where'd you get that understanding?
I don't remember who told me. Someone advised me that he'd resign.
You don't know who?
No, I don't recall.
You didn't fire him?
No.
Objection form. Go ahead.
Oh. No.
The next entity is THI Holdings LLC, DBA Trans Health. This entity, I think I could come up with 3 different reasons why it shouldn't be here. First, I would not say that THI Holdings LLC ever did business as Trans Health. Secondly, THI Holdings LLC had absolutely no affiliation with THI of New Mexico at Valle Norte LLC during Mr. Prendergast's employment. As I previously testified, it was the sole shareholder of THI of Baltimore, Inc. However, that ceased on or about March 28th, 2006. And I understand that his employment started in August 2006. And I think I was going to give you one more reason. Oh, the third reason was because THI Holdings LLC has never had any employees, so even if it had been affiliated during the time frame in question, which it was not, there was no way that it could have exercised any control or input over THI of New Mexico at Valle Norte LLC.
Eventually, how did this thing turn out? How did it play out for Mike?
Well, eventually we took the case to trial in federal courts. We had a federal jury trial, and Mike prevailed on his retaliatory discharge claim.
Yes.
And the jury also was asked to consider whether or not all of the various entities that we'd named in the case were indeed part of an integrated enterprise. And they were allowed to select individually each entity that they believed was part of the whole overall corporate process, and they indeed named all of the 6 that we had listed.
And the verdict was?
The verdict was $115,000.
Right. But you settled the case afterwards, didn't you?
That's right.
And I understand it's confidential, the settlement, but you settled it for more than what the verdict was.
That's right.
How did that happen?
The company was very displeased about the finding of the integrated enterprise, which was one of the reasons that we pursued it so sternly during the litigation, as we knew that was going to be a
So why are they going to pay more?
They asked the court to vacate some of the prior holdings as part of the settlement.
Julie, how does a person prove retaliation at work?
It can be very difficult depending on the circumstances, or it can be fairly obvious depending on the circumstances. One thing that we often see is the individual, the employee, will take some type of protected action, complain about discrimination, for example, and oftentimes they will suffer some type of adverse act very soon after that.
Something happened, and
Certainly.
usually it's a bogus or false allegation against the employer. How does the employee overcome that?
The employee can overcome that. For example, the example that Whitney gave of coming up with all types of poor performance issues that had never been raised before.
Especially since they may have had an evaluation 6 months before, which said that they were an outstanding employee. Now 6 months later, they're the worst person on the face of the earth.
Exactly.
How did juries interpret that?
Juries,
Do they see right through it?
Some juries do, certainly. Again, it depends in every case how severe it is. But when you have an employee who has nothing but positive remarks on an evaluation, and shortly thereafter they're being made out to be the worst employee in the world, I think juries frequently do see through that as what's changed. Well, oftentimes the only thing that's changed is the person's complained about the way they're being treated.
Is it easier to prove retaliation than discrimination or harassment?
To say easier to prove, I would say every case is different. Certainly, the types of evidence, when you have a retaliation claim that, in Mike's case, for example, the day that Valle Norte received the state inspector's report that indicated he had made some complaints about the facility, he was fired later that day, so within several hours. That was a very strong case of retaliation. Trying to link something that happened 2 months ago to an adverse action, or a complaint that was made 2 months ago to an adverse action, it's more difficult. So it really depends on the case.
You know, in some industries or in small towns, this is, you know, not the biggest town in the world, you get fired from one job, you try to get another job at another place, you can't get a reference, or you often hear about employers who they don't give references these days, but they kind of like talk between the lines.
Sure.
That's retaliation. That affects you. How can one address that if you're in a difficult situation like Mike was?
That's often a very difficult thing to address, and I have frequently have people come in who say, well, I have this new job, I'm concerned about bringing an action against my former employer. It's often very difficult.
What do you tell those people?
Frequently, again, those people, that's a hard one. I frequently will tell people that it may be a concern, that they need to be aware that that certainly could happen. even though we may have a case going on, we don't want people to, certainly we realize that bad things can happen during the course of litigation, so we try to be as honest with people as possible.
Well, thank God Mike found you. How did he come to you guys, by the way?
He actually was referred to us by another lawyer in town.
Oh, okay. Because you got him justice. And really appreciate you spending time with us on the show, and hopefully anybody else who has a problem, call you up there too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.